Hey folks, we're back with another guide, but yeah, I'm showcasing a character who needs no introduction. I've actually showcased him before. It's the real Pyro Archon himself, Bennett. And in case you're new here, I'm Godric, and Bennett has been my main since day one. I was also a day one Genshin player, so back then Bennett was I wouldn't say given hate, but some players, if not most, didn't really see his potential yet. Since he's got his new skin, I'm here to showcase him again, so let's go. If you're a new player or an old player who's never used Bennett for some reason, this one's for you. Or even if you've been using him, well, you might learn a thing or two here, so stick around. So Bennett is obviously one of the pioneer characters released since 1.0, one of the well-known international team members, of course with Xiangling and Xingqiu. Bennett is very versatile. He can act as a DPS, at least in the early game, a burst support, and of course an all-around support. I never knew about those before, but when I was starting, I really just liked his design and character. So yeah, anyway, let's take a look at his kit. His basic attack and skill are quite straightforward, they deal damage. However, a little bonus for Bennett's skill, in case you don't know, you can use it in 3 ways. So first is tap, simple, damage. And second is you hold, but quite shortly. It's the same, but of course a higher total damage. There's also something often overlooked with this one, but it involves his C4, so let's get back to that one when we talk about his cons. And then third is a longer hold, so you'll notice that spark, and then he'll be tossed back. I personally don't often use this, but sometimes it comes in handy. And his skill cooldown are also quite fast, enough at 5 seconds, and there's more time for the cooldown when you hold. As for his burst, this is why you use Bennett. So Bennett's burst costs only 60 energy. You can get it pretty quickly, especially with how you build him. So his burst does 2 things. First is it can heal your on-field character based on his overall HP up to 70% of your character. But since on average, a normal level 80 or 90 character's HP is at around 17k, more often than not, you don't need to stack HP on him. But then again, that depends on the safety net that you want to build for your team. The second one that his burst does is it buffs your on-field character. If your Bennett is at C0 and if your on-field's HP is above 70%, or if they're already healed by Bennett's burst, then they'll receive attack buffs. So this attack buff is based on Bennett's base attack. Base attack is where some players get confused sometimes. So base attack is the white one here. That comes from Bennett's character level plus his weapon's base attack. So other attack buffs or artifact attack stats won't contribute to that. So that's why his weapon of choice matters, whether you decide to make him a DPS or a pure support. So now, with that said, let's go to his weapons. So if you want to make him a support or a burst DPS, whatever, you'd still want to give him, a high base attack weapon. So some of his best options are, of course, Missplitter Forged Ayaka's weapon, the Aquila Favonia from the standard banner. You also have Haran, which is Ayato's weapon, Skyward Sword, among other 5 stars. So most of them are, generally good for him. So you'll also notice the ones I've mentioned have like 600 plus base attack, because again, that's what you want for him. Now for the 4 stars or 4-star swords, I'd advise you to go for the ones with the 565 base attack, since that's the highest base attack that you're gonna get from a 4-star sword. So you have, of course, the Sapwood Blade, one of his best options by far. It's craftable in Sumeru, as well as the Fontaine craftable Finale of the Deep. And of course, you can also use the free Rancor if you have no other option, again based on the base attack. But if you want to use Bennett as more of a utility support, of course you can also use the Favonia Sword. However, of course, you want to stack him with crit rate to proc its effect. Now let's go to his artifacts, and like I said, since he's very versatile, you can build him with almost any supportive or offensive set. So like with my build for him, I've got him on 4-piece emblem set. I'm utilizing his fast cooldowns, and of course, since we want to keep his burst up as much as possible for the buffs, it also helps out in dishing burst damage when available. and not to mention the pyro application. And when we say available, that's always available, of course, because of its ER and short cooldowns. Alright, anyhow, his probably ancient yet reliable build has always been the 4-piece Noblesse. It buffs his burst damage, it also buffs all your characters, so that's a win. And as more sets have come out, through the patches, through the versions, some of them are usable in niche scenarios. So you've got Deepwood for Dendro related reactions, because sometimes you want to use other sets for your main Dendro units. You also have the Instructor 4-piece, although it's only 4 stars, but yeah, if you need the EM buffs, you can go for this one. Cinder City for damage bonus. Just make sure that you trigger the elements that you want to buff. And of course, for DPS focused build, you have plenty of options for this one. So you've got Crimson Witch, Marichosi. However, this one's best used when he's with Farina, or a combination of the 2-piece offensive set. So you've got your attack percent, gladiators, and EM focus like the Wanderer set, pyro damage, of course your Crimson Witch. All of these are based on how you want to use them, like mix and match those 2-piece sets. But as for the main stats, this is where it sparks debate. But then again, it's a matter of how you want to use him again. But personally, as you can see with my build, my all-rounder build for him is what I always like to share. So we have here ER Sands, Pyro Damage Goblet, and Crit Rate Circlet. And for the substats, of course, prioritizing crits and ER and attack percent if there's any. Now, your focused main stat may vary, but it's important to focus on ER on your Sands unless you already meet your ER requirements from your substats. I've got around 220 ER here, but of course, depending on how you use him or who's in your party, or if you're using Favonius Sword on him, that can vary. Like, it really depends on your situation or where you're using him. So make sure that you experiment and see that on your own. And in terms of the Goblet and the Circlet, again, some build him with HP, some HP healing bonus. That's fine. It's important to focus on your main DPS first, and once you're done with them, and if you have extra resources, then if you want to build Bennett like this, like mine, or at least close to it, then that's totally up to you. The only point here I'm making with this build of mine is, aside from him being my bias, is I already get enough heals without the HP or healing bonus main stats. It's just, it's nice to squeeze in a couple of damage with your supports, and I guess that's the best case if he's using like the Noblesse and or the Favonius, because with Noblesse you get burst damage bonus, and with Favonius you need crit rate anyways, so why not utilize those and take advantage of them. Alright, so for constellations, as a 4-star, it's not really up for debate if you wanna, air quotes, get them, because eventually you will, but let's go over them real quick. So C1, this ignores 70% threshold we were talking about earlier for his buff, or for his burst rather. So regardless of your on-fielder having above or below 70%, they'll have that attack buff. Not to mention, there's an additional 20% buff for that. And then for C2, extra ER for Bennett when he's below 70%. And then C3, C5, of course we all know that's an extra skill and burst level. And for C4, the thing I mentioned earlier about his skill, so without this, like if you hold his skill, like short hold, it'll only do this, right? So with C4, you can do an extra attack and he'll perform a follow-up attack. So I find myself doing this if like I want to insert extra damage or pyro application, so just something to keep in mind. And of course C6, the most controversial constellation of a 4-star, I guess, by far. In fact, I can still see other players not activating this or only activating this just now for some reason. Okay, so it's simply an additional pyro damage bonus, for the on-field character. However, it infuses that character, if melee, meaning sword, claimer, or polearm, so it infuses them with pyro, basically rendering Bennett a pyro version of Chongyun, which is for cryo. So in the early versions of Genshin, this messes up parties, or I guess specific characters only, that use Bennett as an attack buffer. So you have Kaching, Ayaka, and physical characters like Eula, Razor, or Fremine. But times changed, and we've got other characters now that who are dedicated to buffing those specific elements. So we have Shanha, albeit 5-star of course. We have Mika for physical, Sarah 2 for electro, and so on. So unless you're using only Bennett for those characters, then by all means, don't activate C6. Otherwise, it really doesn't hurt. So yeah, today we also get to see Bennett's backstory through the summer event, and I feel so proud to be one of his believers from day one. So make sure guys that you grab his new skin from the new event, and please like the video and subscribe if you haven't yet. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more quick tips and guides, just comment which character you want to see next, and yeah, I'll see you on the next one.